Hey guys, want to welcome you again to the Three Circle Podcast Beyond the Weekend. My name's Chris Bell, and I am a part of this amazing pastoral staff at Three Circle Church. And we're really glad that you're taking a moment to jump in with us and listen. And we always hope that you're encouraged and blessed and maybe even laugh a little with us as we dive into the weekend teaching, go a little deeper into it, and also get to know people. Have conversations. That's what this is all about. So thanks for joining us. And today on the podcast, as usual, we have a guest. Because, let's be honest, it'd be really boring if it was just me sitting here talking to you. So we bring in incredible people, and we have one of our incredible team members today. This young guy is the student pastor at our Robertsdale campus and just doing a great job. I've actually known him for about 7 or 8 years. Got to do some coaching and mentoring with him before he came on our team. And man, he's a dad. He is a husband. He loves theology, also loves leadership. He's entrepreneurial, got a lot of cool stuff going. And what's happening at our Robertsdale campus is just a beautiful story. And part of that story is the student ministry and what's happening there. So it is really great to have my good buddy, Ben Kiser, on the podcast today. Welcome.
Yeah, man. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, man. It's good to have you here. And wow, so you and I have known each other for a while. So what we want to do is let everyone get to know you. Number one, the Robertsdale campus is just amazing, right?
Yeah.
What God's doing there, the story there. What are we, a year and a half in now?
Yes, sir.
Coming up
Yes,
on
sir.
2 years at Easter.
That's right.
And wow, who thought that this could happen the way it has?
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster.
Has it?
Yes,
So
sir.
what's it been like, Ben, to be a part of digging something out of the ground like that, watching it literally come to life?
So I would say it's one of the hardest tasks I've ever
Mhm.
taken on, and there's a lot of moving parts. I've never been part of a set up, tear down campus, and so all of this is new to me.
Yeah.
And I would say that in a previous life, it's easier than running 10 daycare centers.
Yeah.
So it's
Which
it's
is something you had done in the past,
So,
but it is a different deal. I did set up tear down when I was church planting in Florida. Oh man, years. We did it for years, and we moved around a good bit. So we were in a high school. We were at a Seventh-day Adventist church that let us use their facilities on a Sunday. We were in a movie theater, so we were always setting up and tearing down. And there's a lot of work, just brutal work that goes into it that people don't realize, right?
that's right.
I mean, what time are you guys and the teams getting there on Sundays
Yeah,
now?
so it was 4 a.m.
Right.
And so, we're waking up at 3 a.m., getting up there
Yeah.
and getting everything prepped up. Now it's 5:15, so that's
Oh,
a huge break. We're getting
huge.
to sleep in a little bit. Get time for some coffee and
You're
some
right.
breakfast and then head in.
Though, the thing that I always saw, and maybe you've seen this, Ben, about set up, tear down, is it does create incredible community. There's something about
Absolutely.
doing something shoulder to shoulder with other people that, because while you're setting up all of that equipment, kids' rooms, lobbies, worship center, you are interacting with people. You're having this time with people, and really the friendships deepen, the relationships. Have you seen that to be the case at Robertsdale?
Absolutely. Super strong. So I'll admit at the beginning stages of it, I absolutely hated it. And then now I love it. And I really don't want to go back to anything else but set up and tear down. So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat.
I tell people all the time, because it is hard, so you do kind of hate it in the beginning, right? You're
That's right.
human. But what we found, so in my former life in Florida when we were church planting, we did set up, tear down so long that when we did get a building, it was we could feel it, Ben, immediately. We could feel that we had lost something. And quickly I realized we lost all of that human interaction that we were having every single week.
See.
Not only setting it up, tearing it down, you getting time together and just, all of that. And so we quickly had to pivot and recreate that in another way, because we realized, we had some people, it's funny, we had people who had been a part of that setup tear down team that suddenly started letting us know they felt disconnected from the church. And at first we thought, why? And then it hit us. It's because those hours we were all spending together doing this thing every week has now disappeared. And so it is interesting that it can be a blessing in disguise.
And, I get to do it twice a week, Chris.
That's
so
right.
we're setting up, tearing down at the PZK for our student gathering. So I get a double dose of it.
So talk to us about that, Ben. So not only do we have a thing happening on Sundays in Robertsdale, but you have helped us build an incredible student ministry in Robertsdale, Alabama, and you're seeing God do amazing things. And yeah, we rent another facility on Wednesday nights.
That's right.
That's been a real blessing. How's that going?
And it's absolutely phenomenal. So a typical day, getting there at the high school, picking up our 24-foot trailer, hauling it into the PZK, and we have a load of students that actually help. They show up and they help, and many volunteers. And so we just get to it. And we'll have everything set up within, I would say, less than an hour. We've got it down to a science, and that's with all of us just hustling, moving, going at it. So,
Less than an hour.
yes, sir.
Oh man, that's incredible. And so through the student ministry, like I said, coming up on 2 years, what have you seen God do in the lives of teenagers through the Three Circle student ministry there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've definitely seen a growth in faith, and so far I think it's 8 baptisms in. We're seeing students that are starting to take initiative and lead. It's really neat seeing them taking the initiative to start something even in the community outside of the church realm and doing things to help the local community out, which is great. And they're taking the bull by the horns. It's their idea. It's them coming up with the project and taking it on and recruiting and so forth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool to see that happen. I did student ministry was in my past and is very rewarding. It's a lot of work, but man, the impact that you're having on kids' lives is just unbelievable.
Yeah, man. Sometimes you don't see the fruit.
Right.
The seeds are planted and you don't see it for years to come. So it's been neat to see that aspect of it.
I remember when TC and Megan came here 11 years ago. I told them because I'd been in that world before. I said, guys, you won't see it day to day, but in a few years, you're going to start seeing this wave come in of your legacy of what's happening.
That's right.
These kids grow up, and you begin to see the impact of your ministry. And there's few areas of ministry that I think are more. When you have a long view of it, you begin to see the impact, and it's so unbelievably rewarding. To watch a kid, in your case, a kid that's been with you from the beginning, one day graduate high school, and then you watch what God does with their lives, with their life, and you realize, oh man, I got to be a little part of that.
That's right.
It's pretty huge.
Yes, sir. We have a student now that's leading up 2 mission trips overseas, and it's just really neat. He graduated off to college, and he wants to do Christian film, and just seeing those kind of things.
Are
Story
you
after
serious?
story. Yes, sir.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I had not heard that story.
it's really neat.
Okay, so Ben, let's get to know you a little bit. A lot of people on here might not know you, especially if they're one of the other campuses. So I've known you for a while. Your journey, you grew up in a small town
Yes,
in
sir.
Alabama,
That's right.
but so you became a Christian at a young age, is that right?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
accepted Christ February the 6th, 1999.
1999.
Yes, sir.
I love the year 1999 because the year 1999 is the year that my wife and I, Nan, we were dating, and so that's a real good year on my calendar, man. So for you, it is as well because you came to Christ.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty awesome. How old would you have been then?
6, 7. Yeah, 6, 7 years old.
Well, I was only like 15. I'm just kidding. I was 20, 22, 21, 22. Oh, I'm getting to be an old guy, Ben. But anyway, so you come to Jesus, and at what point did you begin to feel a stirring inside of you for the calling on your life? Because you clearly have a calling. When did that happen?
Yes, sir. So it happened at a young age, and so at our private school, I actually would set up these little missionary camps on the playground, and so I was good at kind of getting people hyped up, and so we would group up and witness to the younger ones. And I had, I started off more, I would say, on the legalistic side, and so I would meet with older people and ask them their one regret, and their one regret was, I wished I'd read the Bible more. I wished I'd been more involved in church, and so I was like, that's not going to be me. So I forced myself to read 3 chapters a day in the Word of God, and I had a devotion book that I would read as well. And I would sit there and journal. I have stacks of papers specifically on Proverbs that I wrote as a little kid. And it wasn't until later on that, I realized the difference between relationship and religion.
Mm,
And so I started building upon my relationship with the Lord
okay.
and opposed to the religion side of it all.
Did you have a good student ministry at your church?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was small.
Sure.
I was part of a lot of small town churches, and
Yeah.
even got asked to preach at one of them, and at a young age, and very interesting. So I was marinated in it.
Yeah. And then you end up at the University of Mobile.
Yes,
You're
sir.
my
Sure.
alma mater. So what brought you there? How did that connection
Oh
happen?
man, Chris. So I actually spoke on some of this last night. So I I encourage people. We all go through our trials, and we have our small forms. And I kind of refer to like anxiety as like a small balloon. And if you drop a small balloon, it doesn't bust. But if you drop a big balloon, it bursts. And so we have to take care of that anxiety at an early age. And college was one of those things that kind of had spurred some anxiety in my life. And I read a book by Eric and Leslie Ludy called "When God Writes Your Love Story."
Mm.
And so I was refusing to. I had just graduated at Southern Union, got my associate's degree, transferred
Okay.
over to the University of Mobile, and you know as well as I do, it's expensive.
Yes, it is.
It's a lot of money. So I was praying around that. Didn't have any student loans from
And if
Southern
you
Union.
were like me, Ben, we didn't have a lot of money.
That's right.
You know?
Absolutely. And debt wasn't an option for me. So my parents had instilled that. So I wasn't going to do student loans. I had completely wrecked my GPA at Southern Union. I had like Chris,
Why did you do that?
I didn't study for tests. I just came
Oh.
in, take the test.
Yeah.
And I think I had like a 2.4, 2.5 GPA coming in.
Okay.
And I was touring different campuses: Jacksonville, Jack State, Auburn, which was close to our home, and South Alabama. And I walked on the campus at the University of Mobile, and I felt that instant peace, like this is where you're supposed to be. And so I prayed around it, and God's like, this is where I want you.
At this point, did you already have interest in going into ministry? Did you think that was your
Absolutely.
direction? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got
Yes,
it.
sir. And I think ministry was going to look a little different for me. I wasn't necessarily looking at maybe in a church setting,
Okay.
but through coaching and other avenues such as that. But I come on campus, and I'm like, how am I going to pay for this tuition? And I actually spoke to the Coast Guard, and I was going to have them pay it, and had already signed some of the paperwork. And 2 weeks before school started, I get a call from the University of Mobile, and they gave me an academic scholarship. So I had applied for one.
The Lord
Yeah,
provided.
the Lord provided. So I
That's
walked
what
in
you
there.
call, what's that verse that says making a way where there seems to be no way?
That's right.
So
100%.
and it helped you through, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Amazing.
And then that's where I met my lovely wife, and she actually taught me how to study, Chris. So
How about
was able to raise that GPA.
that? She
up
took one
to
for the team there.
about a 3.8. Yeah.
So you guys met at University of Mobile, and how many years were you there? 3?
Yes, sir. 2.5. Yes, sir.
2.5 years. You met Joe Savage there, is that right?
Correct.
Kind of
Yes,
got
sir.
in his world. Joe Savage used to be the ministries director there and the theological department head,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
But also really good developer of people. Just really great guy. Goes to our church. We love Joe. So through all of that, you began to do some student ministry, and how I ran into you is you ended up at First Baptist Foley. I know there's a journey you took to get there, but I spoke and did kind of a revival thing there, and you and I connected, and then I get, and I love the proactive part of you, because I get a call from you going, hey, I want to meet, let's meet, when can we meet? And I put you on the schedule, and that began a relationship between you and I, kind of a once a month thing, and I always enjoyed it and thought a lot of you, because I just love proactive people. I love someone that says, I want to go after this. And so you were beating down the door going, I want some coaching. I want to learn from you guys. And so, and it took years before you were on the team. It took a long time. But what was that journey like? And what is it inside of you, Ben, that says, I'm going to make that phone call? I'm going to call and see if this dude will meet with me, that kind of thing, because you didn't know me at all at the time.
Yes, sir. I think for any job, any organization, it's kind of you head that department as long as it looks good.
Yeah.
We're good. And so I knew that there were some things that I needed to work on. I wasn't getting the feedback, and so that's when I reached out to you and was like, "Hey, Chris, push me, beat me up a little bit, give me a few bruises." And so you came in and took a look at student ministry from my point of view of where I was at that time, and got brought in a relic today.
You did. I'm looking at
Of
this right next to
yeah,
me. And how old is this? Did you say
that's
8
about
years?
7 years, 7 years old, and
And these are whiteboards that you and I would do back then.
that's right.
And I mean, I'm looking here. It has sermon prep. We would just talk all the way through this thing. And I remember I made a couple of visits over there too to just
That's
come
right.
see.
Yes, sir.
It was kind of cool because I'd been out of that little world for a while, and I had this thing happening here. And I remember one time I was driving over to Foley to see what you were up to, and kind of look at it. And a part of me, I went, man, what are you doing? What are we doing here? And but then there was this thing in me that just thought, you know what? Guys poured into me. I had people pour into me that way. And I just believed in you, and it was fun. It was fun for me to go over, and you were always so receptive. And you had a really, really great ministry there at Foley, didn't you?
Yes, sir. It was
Great church.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
A lot of kids that you had an impact on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I remember some of the adjustments you had made when you came in. You looked and you saw the stage. There was some plants on stage then, I think. And you're like, dude, what are you doing with like some plants on the stage? I'm like, I don't know. They've just been here for years, and I've kind of moved them around. And
Yeah.
you're just like, hey, you need to paint the backdrop black and the
Yeah.
stage black, and started working on some of those cosmetic things, because I feel like we skip over those cosmetic
Yeah.
issues and the appearance of things. And so it was more of just kind of leaning on my teaching and the work that I put in as far as my presentations, opposed to the appearance. And so you shed a lot of light on that, which helped out greatly.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and then you ended up leaving First Foley. You ended up going back into kind of entrepreneurial, that world, which you certainly can operate there. You worked with kind of a financial company. I know you write an investment company.
Yes, sir. It was Clear Capital Partners, and
Uh-huh.
we bought businesses up throughout the Southeast.
Yes, you did that for a while. And remind me, did you work with Coca-Cola for a while?
Yes, sir.
That's
I
what I
did.
thought.
I was doing that alongside of student ministry well before that,
Yes,
and helped
yes,
them out part time,
that's right.
and was part time student pastor.
That's right. And then you ended up at a Methodist church in
Yes, sir.
Daphne.
That's right.
If I remember that.
Yeah.
And so what I loved is you're just a gritty guy, man. You just keep, one door closes and another one opens. And then it was not long after that this Robertsdale thing started happening for us. And we reached out to you. What was that like for you when, you got the call from us to have a conversation? Was there anything in you that thought, oh, wow, this thing's coming full circle, this place that I've kind of learned from, now I might go be a part of it?
Yes, sir. So I actually had came. I was coming down off a mountaintop and was walking through a valley.
Like a real mountaintop.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And I had sold my side of Clear Capital. I sold my partnership in that, and God had called me back into student ministry. And I had churches that reached out to me. You knew some of those churches because you were still mentoring me at the
Yes,
time, and
that's
I
right.
discussed some of that. And but I was just waiting. I was like, God, I don't want to serve at just any church. I want to serve it where you have me specifically. And so I actually I started working for Buffalo Rock Pepsi, which I worked for as well full time while doing student ministry. So I went back to that job and just continued to pray and just wait. And then I got a call from you the Tuesday after Easter. And I know you had to have a day of recuperating there Monday, and then
Yeah.
Tuesday you give me a call, and you're like, Ben, I still remember the conversation very clearly. You're like, Ben, what are you doing with your life? Like, what's up? And I think you knew that I had sold my side of Clear Capital, and I said, hey, I'm praying about student ministry. And so that's what spurred the conversation. I came in and met with you guys, and honestly, the Robertsdale wasn't even in the picture at the time, and I wanted to be at Robertsdale.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into my interview. I think it was like my fourth, fifth interview with you guys, and my wife said, maybe they'll offer you the Robertsdale position. And I said, no, they've already got their checks and balances in place. They haven't said anything about it.
Yeah.
And I walk in that meeting, it's like, hey, Ben, what do you think about Robertsdale? And I was like, I thought you would never ask.
Yeah. I remember the night we met your wife, and she's amazing. And for some reason, I remember that we had barbecue. We catered in barbecue that night,
Sir, yeah.
and to meet you guys and get to know you. And it's always a fun process. Of course, I knew you, but everybody else needed to get to know you. And then, of course, as we all do, man, we grow, right? We grow. We get in there and we grow. And I'm sure the past couple of years has been a growing experience for you. What are some of the things, some of the leadership lessons that you have learned sitting in the seat of that student ministry there in Robertsdale?
Yes, sir. I think it goes kind of going toward your teaching this past Sunday as far as knowing what God had done in the past to help me in the present. And so I leaned upon that because, I stepped in as the children's pastor as well. So
Yeah,
I was doing
you had
kids,
a lot on your plate.
preteen, and students.
And it got big fast.
Yes, sir. So
right?
at that time we were running. At that time we were around 30 students and about 50 kids, and so that's a lot of parents too to reach out to, and I felt overwhelmed at first, and it
Sure.
was just like, hey, this is one of those moments that you've got to roll up your sleeves, you've got to roll up your pants. You're just going to have to wade through this thing and just lean on Him. And I think that's the missing component, Chris. For a lot of people, it's we live in a culture where, when you're listening to podcasts and when you're listening to your mentors and it's just like, hey, it's part of life. Like, you got to roll your sleeves up and roll your pants up and you just got to wade through it. But if you're not accompanying that with holding God's hand and constantly bringing that in prayer and bringing your troubles before Him and your issues, you're going to fail. You're going to burn out. You're going to be like that balloon I talked about earlier, and you're going to pop.
Right. That is so true. And so what you're saying is the past 2 years, not only did you grow as a leader, you grew as a Christian.
Absolutely.
You grew in your walk with God.
100%. I had no other choice and no one else to lean on. So I was just, many of times I walked out on our property there in Alberta and just walked out there with the animals and just cried out to God. I'm like, hey, God, like, how do I handle this? Or how do I write this system out? And how do I build this process?
Yeah.
And through and through, just holding His hand, He directed me each and every day and provided the people. Like,
Sure.
Chris, there would be, with ministry, you have volunteers that call in the day of. Chris, it was amazing. It got to the point to where there was like no stress if, say, 4 volunteers called in, and I'm like, I've got to have volunteers in that kids' room. I would literally just be like, I know God's going to take care of it, because each and every Sunday, it was so amazing. I'd have 5 or 6 volunteers that just show up and say, hey, Ben, we're not doing anything this Sunday. Do you need us for any reason?
Wow.
And, being a 9 on the Enneagram and being a little passive, kind of like Saul in some areas, I had to, it's like, well, yeah, kind of, and in my head, I'm like, absolutely, like, I need you right now.
Yeah.
So
you learned, you had to learn to say yes to
yes,
that,
sir,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes, sir.
I love watching what God's doing there. You're speaking of we're in the sermon series, David and Goliath, and what we did really that first few weeks is we talked about the difference, if you will, between a passive person like King Saul and a very proactive, actively obedient person like David. Of course, we know that the whole story points us to the gospel and Christ. But when we look under the hood of that story, Saul was very passive, even though he's the one that had the authority. He was the giant of Israel. Philistine had a giant, Goliath, and Israel had their giant. But Israel's big man wouldn't fight. Right? For 40 days, 80 times he had a chance. And I like to tell people that we all want to see ourselves as David, but I think we all have a little King Saul in us.
Right.
We all have a little passive side to where we let things go. And, I don't know. I want to believe that you and I would have run down into the valley and fought Goliath. I don't know. I think I might have sat in the tent too.
I would have totally sat in the tent.
Right? And so, but when you look at it, they even sound different. Like, we hear nothing from Saul really day after day. David, we saw this past weekend, Ben, the Bible says Goliath came into the valley again, said it again, and then there's one little line, and David heard him. And that's where he messed up.
Yeah.
Because Saul had been hearing him for 40 days. But David, all it took one time. It took one time for David to hear him. And I'm so inspired by that, Ben. I'm so inspired to be a person that takes action quickly, immediately, right? Like a sense of urgency. What are some areas of our lives that you think we need to become more active and have more of a sense of urgency? Like, as a dad, as a husband, as a man of God, what are some areas that you think we lack urgency too often and that we need to kind of get things in gear?
Absolutely. So as a father, I think the number one thing for parents, and I see it across the board, is staying glued to social media or our phones, and it's easy to to just kind of passively sit there and scroll while our kids are playing around us. Definitely guilty of it. And I have to, there's little things like even setting a timer or putting locks on your social media, whether it be, your Facebook or Instagram or whatnot, just to kind of remind you, some kind of reminder there to pop in and discipline yourself to say, hey, I need to be active in their life, because here's the thing, we only got a limited time with them. And so we need to take advantage of that, complete advantage of it. And I see it across the board in student ministry. I see it anywhere we go, whether you're sitting at a restaurant or we're sitting at a playground. It's easy just to, and a lot of us work from our phones. So we're doing work from
Sure.
it, checking emails and everything else. And so having those things scheduled out, I think is
That's
super,
good.
super important.
So really watch out for that. Get active about setting some boundaries with technology.
100%.
So many people who've been on the podcast say that. What's another area that you see from your unique vantage point that we need to have urgency in?
Yeah, I think marriage is a big thing, and prioritizing quality time with your wife. And so whether that's hiring a babysitter, totally worth it to go on a date night, or to make some kind of concerned effort to spend one-on-one time with your wife, because you and I both know that's like without our wives, parenting life in general would just
Yes.
be 20 times harder.
Yeah,
So
and of
pouring
course,
into
if
that.
you lose your marriage, if your marriage is falling apart, then then you can't do ministry.
Yes,
Of
sir.
course, and so that's one of the requirements, right? What's a date night look like in the Kiser house? So
Man,
what do
you-
y'all do?
Chris, so we have some amazing in-laws. So my mother and father-in-law, they'll keep the kids, and my wife and I, believe it or not, doesn't sound fancy, but we absolutely love Culver's.
Oh, really?
Have you had
Yeah,
Culver's?
you go down to Foley, huh?
Yeah, we got.
I think we're getting one near us here
Yes, sir.
in Fair Oaks, what I
Okay.
heard.
It's amazing. Like,
So I've never had Culver's.
we're
though.
addicted to Culver's, and
The
obviously
burgers.
we
You
got
love the burgers.
Yes, sir. They're good. They're good, and the chicken sandwich is great too.
Okay.
So, and then
So that's date night.
we have a Texas Roadhouse as well.
Okay.
So they just built a new one there in Foley. So
All right.
we hit it up this past time.
Okay. Are y'all movie people?
No, sir. Chris, we have limited TV in the house, so we don't
Okay.
watch a lot of TV.
All right.
I rarely watch TV. My wife, she doesn't watch a lot of TV.
Uh-huh.
So we're not really big movie people.
Okay.
So kind of boring in that aspect.
And so talk to us for a second about, because you're an active guy. We all have some Saul in us, but you're an active dude. You got a lot going. You did the farm thing for a little while. You've kind of got some property
Yes, sir.
that you work. So I grew up like that. So tell us a little bit about how does the student guy in Robertsdale also have a little side gig in farming?
Yes, sir. So I was raised on a farm in Graham, Alabama. We raised 50,000 chickens every 8 weeks.
That's a lot of chickens.
That's a lot of chickens, and my dad's still doing it to this day. He's
Really?
yes, sir.
Okay.
And we had a timber farm and a cattle farm, and so naturally when we came to Alberta, we have some property there, and I've started getting into goats, which is new.
Oh,
That's
I
a new
love
thing for me.
goats. So I grew up, we were cattle outfit.
Yes, sir.
The farm I grew up on. And I loved goats and begged my grandfather to buy goats like my whole life. And he just didn't want to fool with goats. But I think goats are the coolest.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
They're low maintenance. And,
Yeah, they're low maintenance.
They'll eat anything and everything.
I love their personalities. I
Yeah.
feel like I had a friend who they raised goats. And I would go over there and I felt like they all had these little personalities.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Well, it goes back to building systems, Chris, like what you were saying as far as having time to do things. Well, I don't have to keep up a lot of the property because the goats keep it up.
That's
So
a smart move.
I'll just fence in these overgrown areas and turn some goats loose. And
Yeah.
dude, voila.
How many
it's-
goats do you have?
So right now we only have 2.
That's all
And-
you need,
but
right?
That's really all we need. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And but the goal is to get 20.
You won't. So you want a herd?
Yes, sir.
A herd of goats.
That's right.
All right. How many acres do you have out
We
there?
have 20.
Oh, beautiful, man.
And
Beautiful.
we cut hay on the back half of
Yeah,
it.
no,
And
I grew up doing all that.
yes, sir.
You have a tractor.
Yes, sir.
What do you have? John Deere?
We do. Yes, sir.
Oh.
I had a Kubota, recently sold it, and
People love the Kubotas now.
so we kind of have a family. I share with the in-laws, so they have an International and a John
the
Deere.
red one.
Yes,
John
sir.
Deere's green.
Massey
I grew
Ferguson,
up
all
Massey
of them.
I grew up with a John Deere and a Massey Ferguson.
Okay.
We had these 2 tractors. One was red, one was green. So as a kid, it's like, these primary colors. We had a yellow bulldozer And it was cool because they were all under the same shed. So as a kid, to me, it was very captivating, right?
Yeah.
There's the green one, the red one, the yellow one, and then we had a blue combine, which you harvest with. So everything had these primary. It looked like a crayon box out there under the barns. And so, and growing up that way was so cool, so interesting. But there is something about growing stuff, right? And I think there's a correlation with you, in your leadership. You know what it's like to dig something out of the ground, to break the ground, put the seeds in, watch it grow, and harvest it. And you're not only doing that on those 20 acres, but you're doing that in the hearts and lives of teenagers in Baldwin County. And I think that's a pretty cool thing, man. So tell us as we close today, if you were, you got people from all over the area listening right now, Ben, what would you say to them, their parents, their moms, their dads? They all have a garden, if you will, that they've got to keep, so to speak. They've got a vineyard that God has given them, their own lives, their own homes. What are a couple of things that you would say to them that they need to be aware of as they are tending their own lives, their own gardens?
Yes, sir. So obviously chaos is happening all around us at any moment. And, it's like Pastor Blakey giving the example, you clean your house, as soon as you're done, there's dust that's still falling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the same thing with our lives. And I think that we have to be more intentional. You've seen my planner. I brought it in multiple times in your office during our mentoring sessions, but planning out your day the night before and strategically going through that to be aware of any kind of issues like, hey, I answer questions before my day. I schedule it out hour by hour. I answer questions at the end of my day. I grade myself. And so some of those days, once you've done it for so long, you kind of get in that rhythm. And so I can just pull a notepad out and start writing down the key stuff.
Right.
But I'll think through those issues of this could be a problem, like getting the kid to daycare on time
Sure.
or to school on time. This could be a problem because I got to be at this meeting at this time. And so just rewiring your brain to start thinking through those issues the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you wake up in the morning, you've got a game plan, like you're armored up, you're ready to go. And I think the number one most important thing throughout my whole life, the one consistent thing, haven't been good at a lot of things, Chris, but I have stayed consistent in reading the Word almost every single night or every single morning. And so that's kind of bled over into my kids. Like we do devotions together. I don't even have to ask. My 4-year-old pulls his Bible out, sits next to me. He loves those little Gideon Bibles.
Oh, yeah.
They got their cool colors. So we have like a stack of those. And we'll sit down together and he'll just, pretend to read. And then at the end of it, having a quiet time and just meditating on what it is that we read about. And so I think that's key is just, rewiring your brain to think through some of those issues. And you're still going to have issues that pop up that were unexpected. But
Sure.
I think being as most prepared as you possibly can, because life is crazy, life is chaotic and chaos is all around us and we've got to be prepared for it.
Yeah. So don't plan to fail, right?
That's right.
What's the phrase? Failing the plan is planning to fail.
Yes, sir.
I love that. You are a good planner. You really organize your life. And man, it's inspiring, Ben, to watch what God's doing in your life and through the Robertsdale campus. So thank you for taking a little time to be with us today on the podcast.
Absolutely. It was an honor.
And guys, if you're out there and you're listening, we hope to encourage you. Look, Ben's telling you his journey and God has been faithful to him. And he's just like you. He's trying to be a dad and a husband and he's got all the pressures of life just like we all have. But he has found God to be faithful and he keeps his yes card on the table. And that yes card has taken him to all sorts of different environments, and including landing the plane here at Three Circle. And we believe that God is going to be faithful to you as well. But the thing that keeps floating to the surface for all of us through this David and Goliath series is that we are to be people of obedient action. Our life is not meant to be a passive life. We're meant to move forward, step forward in those areas that God has given us to be engaged. That's what we see over and over again from this story. Ben, thank you for modeling that for so many in your own life.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Chris.
Good to have you here today, man. And we hope you guys will join us again next week. We're here every week, same place, same time. It's called Beyond the Weekend. We hope to see you next time right here at the Three Circle Podcast.